Hey, what's up guys? In this video, I'm finally gonna buy a new computer and I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and this computer store Micro Center is only 3 miles from my house, and that's why I'm buying the computer parts here and not from like newegg.com or something. They're also gonna build it for me because I don't know that much about computer building, and if anything goes wrong, I can just come back here and hopefully they can fix it. Okay, so first up, I am going to get the Threadripper 1950x. For GPUs, I'm going to get 2 Nvidia GTX 1080 Ti's. This is the motherboard we're gonna go with. It's kind of like the biggest, craziest motherboard they have. So we got this gigantic Corsair case, should be fine. It does have a clear panel, so we'll be able to see what's going on in there. What is up? I'm back in my home studio and the computer is already built, so if you were looking forward to a video of me trying to fail at building a computer, I didn't do that. I picked out the parts, I did my research, and thanks to Eber from Hardware Canucks for helping me out and giving me advice through this. I'm probably gonna hit you up again for more advice later, but I wanted to make this video just explaining the different parts of the computer that I chose, and then I'll show you some of the software that I'm using and just make a video about a new computer. So number one is the AMD Ryzen Threadripper 1950x. This is, I think, the top of the line processor CPU from AMD, which has been making kind of a comeback in the high-end world, and this is special because of the number of cores that it has. And I want to also start, before we get too deep into this, I am not a PC expert. I've been living in the Mac world, which I still have over there, going to be using it every day still. I've been in that world for about maybe like 8 years, ever since like the G5 or the Mac, I think it was the G5 was the first Mac I got. Ever since then, film industry, that's what I've been using, but I've switched over to this. So just full disclaimer, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I think over the next year I'm gonna learn quite a bit about PCs. Anyway, this is the main first choice that I made for the computer, and why this over the i9? Well, it has more cores and it's pretty affordable, I think, for the CPU performance. Moving on to the motherboard, I will be putting a parts picker list in the description as well, and I'll tell you the price of all this stuff. I mean, I think the prices are still on here. Just so that you guys know how much this costs if you want to put something together that's comparable or more or less. This is the ROG, I think it's Republic of Gamers motherboard. It's pretty much the highest end motherboard I think that was pretty much available for the X399. So I'm told this is what you use with the Threadripper basically. This is the motherboard for the Threadripper, and it's really expensive, but it has a lot of expandability in it. So I have 2 video cards, which we'll get to in a second, but this has room to put in 2 more. I can put in more RAM. I think I have more room for some like M.2 drives, I think. Basically, this is expensive, but it allows me to future-proof this computer, because if all of a sudden in a year or two I'm like, hey, I need double the GPUs, I don't have to change very much. I just have to add them into this. So I got the big motherboard, essentially. So let's get through some boring stuff here. For the power supply, Eber told me that this was overkill, but I got the EVGA Supernova Titanium, is that what it is? Titanium 1600. It's a 1600 watt power supply, so it needs its own like dedicated line in my house at full capacity. Again, I know it's overkill. It was just to future proof. I don't know that much about PC power draw, like how much the GPUs are pulling, etc. I just wanted like the biggest one, so I can add as many GPUs, as many hard drives, as many things as I need to into that computer. I don't want to be like all of a sudden like, oh, now I have to switch out the power supply. I just got the biggest one. Maybe it's a waste of money, but I have a big one now. Moving on to the RAM, I got G.Skill Ripjaws 5 DDR4, and I think this speed was 3200, I don't remember, but I got 64 gigs, which I think is 416 terabyte or gigabyte sticks. And I think, I don't remember on the motherboard, but I think I can have 128 gigs going this style in there. So really fast RAM, really fast, helpful for like all programs that I'm using. Need fast RAM, good stuff. Next on the boring list is the hard drives. I have a Samsung NVMe SSD 960 Pro M.2. From what I understand, these are relatively new to the scene, and they're just like extremely fast, which is great for me for, again, all applications. I'm not doing video editing on this, so this is gonna work out for me because I'm gonna basically put everything on this drive. I'm gonna put the software, the OS, and any of the critical files that you need to read really quickly back and forth. This is just super fast. So I got one of these. It was kind of expensive, but I thought 1 terabyte, that's gonna get me through most of my things, because I'll tell you how I'm gonna use the computers later. And I also got one of these Seagate Iron Wolf drives, which I had in my Drobo too, I think. 6 terabytes, 7200 RPM, I hope. Yeah, I'm not going to be editing a lot, but it's just to dump things too, in case I need to store like, 3D files or scans or something like that. 6 terabytes will get me through a little bit. And to wrap up the boring stuff before we talk about the GPUs, which are a lot of fun, I got this Corsair H115i. Again, I don't know anything about computer parts. I basically told them, give me whatever cooling system I need to keep the CPU cool. And they were like, there really aren't any, or not many off-the-shelf options for the Threadripper because it's so new and it's so big, like physically large, and it runs so hot. But they said that this would do for now. And I'm gonna be keeping my eye out to basically eventually upgrade this so I can overclock the CPU and not melt it, because I use that CPU I push it to its limits, so it's gonna get hot. So eventually this will probably get swapped out, but this has been working so far anyway, and it's the one I have. And last but not least, we have 2 of these. I got 2. We went all the way in. I'm gonna take this, put it down. This is made by EVGA, or they're like the maker. I forget what you call these people, but it's made by Nvidia. It's the GeForce GTX 1080 Ti. Basically, this has, I think, what is it? Has 11 gigabytes of GPU memory that I'm gonna need for GPU rendering, which is something I'm moving into now in Cinema 4D. I'm gonna be using Octane, I'm gonna be using Redshift, and basically anytime a new GPU renderer comes out, I'm gonna buy it and test it, because I wanna know what the best ones are, which ones are good for different things, for visualizing, lighting, camera work, etc., like I do in 3D. So with this and 2 of them, not run in SLI, I've learned that putting them in SLI is actually bad for GPU stuff. I'll be able to render very, very quickly using Redshift in Cinema 4D, which I'll show a demo of either over this or separately. And I have 2 of these, and I can put 2 more in that computer if needed. So those are all the main parts and roughly why I picked them, and I shoved them all in a Corsair 780T graphite case. I don't know much about cases. It's a humongous motherboard, so it needed a humongous case. I haven't had a computer that big since high school, when I used to video game Counter-Strike competitively, etc. So those are the parts of the PC, and now I'm going to talk a little bit about how I have both of these computers and generally how I'm working. If you don't want to watch this part, that's completely fine. So I've had this MacBook Pro, which is a late 2013 MacBook Pro, very old. It's very old, it's very slow, but I've built all of cinematography database from that laptop, and I feel kind of proud about that. I haven't had to rely on really high-end hardware until recently. So this computer, I'm still going to use it every day, and the goal was to have 2 computers. So this computer, really good, in my opinion, at editing in Final Cut and in Premiere or whatever. I'm using Premiere right now, but I might use Final Cut in the future for certain things. It's a little bit faster, I've heard. It's also really good for Photoshop. I like doing photo editing on the Mac. I like how the brush works. I just like Apple stuff when it comes to that type of work. But where this computer falls super flat is for GPU rendering or heavy CPU usage, just because it's an old computer really, but really it's the GPUs, and there's also certain software that just doesn't work with this computer. But I'm gonna be doing all the editing, all the Photoshop, all the social media and emailing and that sort of thing. That's all gonna happen here, and I'm gonna use this computer every day, so I'm not like leaving the Apple world. I'm just picking up a PC for the stuff that's really hardcore. So let's go over to the PC and I'll show you what that's for. So basically the PC is going to be reserved for doing really high-end calculations, both CPU and GPU. So to be honest, this computer is probably gonna just be sitting here rendering like crazy most of the time. So I can set off a really big animation or start meshing a really big piece of photogrammetry, and then I can go back to my Apple computer and do some editing and other stuff like that. So this is really just like a workstation, and someone I've been talking to kind of thinks about it like Apple's for home, which I agree. I would kind of rather have an Apple computer for like my day-to-day stuff, but when it comes to like actually doing work, like 8K coloring or heavy graphics, heavy computation, that's all PC, and if you're really hardcore, it's like Linux. But this is how I'm breaking down these systems, and this is why I'm using it, and I'll show you a little bit of the software that we're using on the PC and why it's pretty much necessary. Okay, so here we are in the PC in a program called Reality Capture. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, I think the company is called Capturing Reality, but the program's called Reality Capture. It gets me so confused, but whatever. This morning, I went out and I took a bunch of photos, which you can see on the left side, and they're like the most boring photos you could ever take in your life, and people think you're insane when you're doing it because you're just taking pictures of the floor. And what you'll see here in this view is that every single one of these little dots here, that's one of the cameras. And what this program does is it puts them all together and it makes it into a 3D model, and then it puts color on it, and then it textures it as well. So you can basically capture reality. And I've made a couple videos about this. This is called Photogrammetry. And this particular program, which is kind of like the industry standard now, it's the fastest. I can use LiDAR scans and photos together, really good stuff, is, guess what, it's PC only, and it needs a pretty killer CPU, and it also needs some pretty killer GPUs. And I now have both, and this didn't take all that long to put together. I think processing time, this was something like total like half an hour, 40 minutes, and that's really fast. And I can do even bigger meshes. And if you saw the video with the castle, this is the program that company used to scan an entire castle. So this is one of the main reasons to have a PC and a workstation like this, is this is really computationally expensive and taxing on your computer, so you need a workstation. And this program is how I'm going to be scanning lots of real world objects and locations and bringing them into 3D to do fun stuff with. So let's go to Cinema 4D now, where I have prepped a scene. So what you see here now, which you can check out on Instagram, is that this floor piece here, that's the scan, okay? So I brought it into Cinema 4D, I cleaned it up, I made it a little bit more low res, and then I just kind of arranged it around in a funny little scene. And I also scanned this curb, which is kind of funny. Both of those are scans that I did this morning to test out the PC workflow, and it worked great. And I lined up this little scene, I lit it up, and in Cinema 4D, I'll hit Shift R. I'll show you the speed of this renderer. So this is using physical renderer in Cinema 4D, and this is how everyone who uses CineDesigner has to work. And it's really decent quality for the money, I think, like in that it's a built-in renderer. You don't have to buy it, but it's a little bit slow. And this is a 1280 by 720 picture here, or render, and that's pretty big still for the CG world. Doing 1080 is obviously even harder. 720, I don't typically render at 720, but what we're seeing here is the AMD Threadripper 1950x chewing through this. So this is basically all CPU. And it might seem slow, depending on how familiar you are with 3D, but I will say that this exact scene, if I sent it to my MacBook Pro, would probably take 2 or 3 hours, maybe 2 hours, depending on the settings. And on this computer, it's probably going to take about 3 minutes. So although this is still a slow process relatively, just sitting here watching it do this rendering thing, just know that this is extremely fast and very high resolution and very high render settings. So after another 2 minutes, whatever, this resolve, and I'll cut to some of the final renders. I put them on Instagram. So I'm going to stop this. So that's physical render for anyone using Cinema 4D. This is going to make the CPU is going to make this much faster, and it is. It's a pretty fast scene, and I can load that up pretty nicely. And the other thing I want to show right here, as I put this on Instagram as well, this is a quick GPU rendering. So this is using Redshift. So this is a GPU renderer, not that you can tell in the viewport here. And what it's really good at doing is rendering extremely fast, which is a good thing, I would say. And let's see. So I'm gonna get out of. I guess I'll just leave it here. So I'm gonna turn this on. Give it a second here, and Redshift is gonna load all these textures and whatnot, and it's gonna load it into this scene. And so with Redshift, when you move the camera like this, it updates insanely fast. If you look how quickly this is updating, move over here, updates. Move over here, updated. Really cool, really fast. And I can take my Kinoflow or Quasar over here, which I should turn to visible. Visible. There it is. You can see it in the scene now. I can take this light, and it's in temperature mode. I can make it warmer, right? And you see it updating extremely quickly. Just know that this is what two 1080 Ti's does. This is how fast it goes. And I can make it blue, color temperature wise, and I'm just lighting. I'm lighting up this scene, right? So you can do really, really fast rendering here. And to be honest, for what CineDesigners need to use this for, which is just quick visualization and communication, I could send this out right now. So I could be like, okay, export, 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 and just send it to the director and be like, well, which one of these looks the best, or something like that. And I can get different angles, and it's all very, very fast. And this is because of the two 1080 Ti's in the system, on top of the processor and the RAM and the hard drive. Everything's just really fast, but it's really the two graphics cards putting in work here. And his material is a little bit crazy. He's just full shiny. I just wanted to try that. And so that's the preview window. So this is when you're working and you're setting up scenes. You just look at this. You don't even really need to look at this viewport over here. You just look in the render view, and things are cranking. So this is where the future of CineDesigner is going to be. I'm going to build it for Redshift. And I'll always have physical because that's what comes with Cinema 4D. But if you want to work like basically real-time rendering, Redshift right here, you guys saw it. It's insanely fast. And so that's the preview render, and I'll show you how fast the final render is here. So this shows you how fast or how much of the GPU is being used. That's like basically nothing. And we're barely even filling the card's video memory, so that's good. And you can already see compared to the physical renderer, even though this is kind of a smaller scene, how fast this is going to resolve. So using the two GPUs, this whole frame is going to render in about 30 seconds, which is bananas. That's insanely fast. It looks probably kind of boring and you're like, oh, cool, it made an image, good job. But if you do any 3D rendering, that is fast. That is what happens when you throw $7,000 at a renderer. That's what happens. You get photoreal rendering. Not that he's photoreal, but the rendering is photoreal. 30 seconds, we're at a 1080 wide frame. Depth of field, really smooth, really high samples, very low noise and basically everything. Shadows, glossiness, all really nice looking. Depth of field looks clean in 30 seconds. So that's just incredible. So basically, I'm able to now combine reality capture, so scan really big real world things, bring those things into Cinema 4D and then render them, again, extremely fast. So I'm going to be building tool sets for others to be able to do this for planning. The scans like this are going to be available through Set Designer as a subscription service. And I'm going to be making YouTube videos and talking about lighting and just doing all sorts of fun stuff. And of course, once you make things in 3D in Cinema 4D, you can publish them to something like Unreal and Unity, and you can make games and VR experiences and all sorts of fun stuff. So that's kind of like a quick workflow that I'm going to be using all the time with this computer, and this computer is going to be very busy. And there's a couple other PC-only programs that I'm using and all sorts of stuff, but that's the main reason I have this computer. And as I'm getting ready to edit this vlog, see on my Apple computer, still going to use it, people wanted to know what is kind of a comparable PC if you don't want to spend $7,000 on a computer. That's how much that computer cost. In the back, just wanted to let people know. CPU 1,000, each video card is 1,000, motherboard's 500, the RAM is 1,000. You just keep going, it's $7,000. It's a lot of money, but for what I get out of it compared to say like a $7,000 Apple computer, for me, for my use case, it's a lot better and it actually feels like a pretty good deal. So if you want to build a PC and you want something a little bit less than that, you can just cut back on a lot of things. Like the CPU, you can get the one under the 1950x and it's going to be a lot cheaper to cool. You have a cheaper motherboard. I would say get 32 gigs of RAM. That's going to be a lot cheaper. Get a smaller M.2 drive, but get the M.2 drive. Just get a smaller one. The 1 terabyte is kind of expensive. And I would say just get one 1080 Ti. I think the 1080 Ti is really going to give you a lot of value for quite a while. And if you can afford it, get a motherboard that you could add more later, because the more GPUs, the more fun. So that wraps it up for this video. I still have my Apple computer and now I have this PC and I'm going to be crushing some GPU rendering. We're going to be doing a lot of photogrammetry and scans, and that's all going to be part of Set Designer. If I want to move into the VR world, which I'm kind of slowly doing, or move into Android development, the PC is really a good place for that. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm probably not going to build another PC for like a long time, but I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have any questions about it or suggestions that you have to make it better or whatever, anything about computers in general, this is probably the video to leave them. Until next time, you guys get out there and plan better, shoot better.